Good afternoon, everybody. We are here. We are admiring Jonathan's new cleaner office. Right, Jonathan?
It's a nice office.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It is the same office, but I have excised some junk and moved around some very important things like the hundreds of records that you can't quite see on the floor behind me.
I really like that little section there back in the end
Pretty
where
cool.
the wall kind of caves and goes on an angle. It's the type of thing you only get in old time East Coast houses.
On the other side of that wall, in the hallway, we have curved plaster.
Ooh, I like that a lot.
Yeah,
That's a nice feature.
yeah. Good old cracks have been there for most of its life, I'm sure. It's
This
pretty
is now we're getting to the point where we discuss our old homes and how we improve them every show at the very beginning, which is nice.
Architecture
Yet,
Talk with
tell
RJ,
us,
Ryan, and Jonathan, and Megan,
tell
who
us
is
where
a,
you lived in 1992.
at what point I went to college in 1992. I graduated high school and went to college in 1992, and I don't know if that was living, um, but I did that. So Virginia still though, because it's for lovers. So obviously I belong.
I had just moved into my parents' forever home, and all I was doing was watching the Chicago Bulls play basketball. It's the only thing I did in 1992. Maybe a couple of other things, but I think that was it.
we're gonna talk about 1992 today. Sorry, spoiler alert, everybody. What Megan is not here. Megan's popular segment, Meg's Corner, which has taken the internet by storm, is needs to either be taken over by someone else or we need to just not do it. So what are we? How are we going to do that? This is the pre-meeting, right?
I'm
We
gonna.
haven't gone live yet, have we?
I'm gonna.
I
No,
think I
probably
think
not.
without doing the bullet points that Meg does so well,
I'm
and we'll
sure
let her
Brian's got great
summarize this.
details here.
I don't, but I do have a couple of thoughts about 1992, and I'm
I do too.
curious. I think maybe the best way to get into this is what are our general thoughts about 1992 Fish and kind of where do we see the band at that point in time? Because I think that I think there's an argument to be made. I don't agree with this argument, but I think there's an argument to be made that if you were to say, where do I start with Fish to understand modern Fish and to understand who this band became, starting with 1992 would be a safe place to do that. I think there's a ton of value of listening to the 80s and the early 90s, but I think if you are a Fish fan with limited time and don't have the desire to go through all these old shows, 1992 is kind of the starting point of where this band became the band that we know today.
It's funny that you use the word safe because some people, I think, when given the opportunity to talk about what Fish is, share what Fish is with their friends, they play it safe. They're like, oh, here's Chalk Dust Torture. It's like a rock song. Some people will say, here's the Fleaser. Love it or get the fuck out of my
You are
house.
on two extremes right now. I love it.
So I think 1992, though, does fall in the safe category. And it's good Fish. It's good. You've got a good catalog of material that they're working on. They are improvising. They are, and we'll talk about some of that. They are doing creative and interesting things, but they're not fucking people's face on a nightly basis in the way that they would later do.
RJ, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair entry point for Fish. I mean, you get some there's a few things. There are, I think, where you start to get kind of legendary shows. So, you have the 416 92 show, 725. There's a lot of shows that I think 1992 is when it starts to kind of become more of a like, you got to hear this show. I think in
Yes.
91 and 90 before that, it's just sort of like, yeah, they're all kind of the same, sort of. At least that's my at least that's my interpretation of it. So in that sense, I think from like a fan folklore perspective, 92 is really when it starts to become important. Um, and then there's new important material that comes in 92 as well. We
Right.
hear a
Well,
few
sorry. Go ahead.
we hear a few we hear a few in this show. We're going to talk about a few songs that came in 1992 that then end up being, staples of the Fish catalog for forever. So I think in those two ways, 92 is important. But I do want to talk about, at some point we're going to have to talk about this show that we chose.
We
We
are.
should, but
Because
I want to add another thing that is really, I think, significant of '92.
Please
It's
do,
not
and then I want to add another thing. So I'm getting in
especially
line for my
significant
thing.
to this show, which is The Secret Language, debuted in the early part of '92, and that was, as Fish was growing, they wanted to continue to communicate with their fans, like their real fans, um, whatever that means. That was pre-hashtag real fans. We didn't hashtag back then. Um, Brian, what else did you have to add?
Well, I wanted to kind of wrap this around in a really important point that I think that you made, that they are not yet at the point where on a nightly basis they're going to be fucking people's faces and fucking people's brains over in a way that will ultimately define when you say to someone, you need to come with me to see the Fish show. You are saying it to someone because you know that they are going to be comfortable with a band that is going to break a ton of rules and do things that you didn't think was possible at a show, may frighten you. That is not this band quite yet. That is this band in moments, in hints. But I think what's really interesting about 92, and especially about where we find ourselves with this show, is this whole tightening up process and figuring out the show structure and the energy and what they need to do on a variety level on a night to night basis that begins in early 1989 kind of comes to an end here, because when they come back out on the road 4 months after this show is played that we were talking about, which is 11/25/92, if we have not mentioned it and if you are not watching the screen and seeing it across the ticker, within 3 months they are going to be playing songs like Stash and Weekapog and You Enjoy Myself and Tweezer, and expanding the edges of where those songs begin and end, which is going to start to define kind of that next step in their evolution.
But they are, at this moment, like in '92, they are doing things that very few other bands are doing, and arguably
Totally.
no other band
Yeah,
is
yeah.
doing. There are definitely some groups that are simpatico with kind of the Fish vibe, but nobody's doing what they did in 1992. And they were definitely people who were eating it up, following them around and seeing as much as they could, and bouncing off the walls as they were shredding Landlady and Sparkle
Mhm.
and all of the kinds of things that we're going to get into here in just a second. And so let's not diminish that, but it is definitely different from where they would land. And I think the purpose is not wrong with this suggestion. The comment here: any of y'all know when the Secret Language really started? Definitely before '92, right? '92 is just when Trey let the fans in on it. Am I wrong? I think '92 is when they were like, there's times when we communicate with music, and then they put together a bunch of signals that were the audience could follow as well. They were communicating with each other through things like the trill and stuff like that, but it
Yeah.
wasn't like they were really
Well,
doing
it allows them to kind of show off their skills. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, this is what we're doing that you don't really know that we're doing it, but like we're going to let you in so you can kind of see what our process is. And I love that aspect of it. Can I divert us really quickly before we
Yeah.
talk about this
I
show?
object. I do not like it when this podcast goes off the map.
It's really important to note that this weekend that this show happened, a movie was released which set the, at the time, this has been broken many times since, but set the record for the highest weekend debut of all time. Do you know what that movie is?
No.
It's a sequel, I'll tell you that.
Let's see.
November
Indiana
92.
Jones. No, don't know it.
Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
That's why I don't know it.
Okay, this is an important question because I was at the exact age range for this movie when this came out. This was like one of the biggest deals of my life at this point in time. Does this movie mean anything to either of you?
I mean, my kids have watched it 50 times. So in that sense, yes. But in any other sense, no.
I'm going to say no, Bob. I've seen maybe half the movie.
All right, we can carry on. I was a 7-year-old at this point in time. This was
You are
everything to me.
excused.
I'm so glad you brought this up. This is like so just, man. Do we even need to talk about the concert with all this
No.
other important stuff?
Shit.
We don't, not at this point. So,
Brian, there's an important thing we have to talk about, which is that we are talking about 11/25/92, but we had a not very lengthy, I guess. We had a brief debate about which show to highlight, and there were a
It was
few
a-
on our list.
It was a short conversation. I think you threw out a short list. Brian said, this show. And here we are.
It's probably true, but I'm trying to this is called building tension, Jonathan. It's for
I'm
entertainment purposes. We had a long and intense discussion, which involved a lot of yelling, and at least one person threatened to quit the podcast for good. It was intense, but we landed it. We mediated, and we're here. Brian, there was one thing that we had to talk about, which we're going to talk about before this show, because I think there's one piece of 1992 music that we can't possibly ignore. But before we talk about that, tell us about the 11/25/92 show, or just like what did you see in this show before we get into it that you wanted to talk about?
Why did you pick this train wreck, Brian?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
I'm not either. I was just interpreting liberally.
I think that it is important as we go through this series to highlight where the band is at their best and also who the band is and just generally is. And this is a show, when I first got into this band, this was heavily recommended and traded, and I remember receiving it from multiple people when I never even asked for it. I was like trading other tapes, and someone would throw this in as, "Hey, if you haven't listened to Fall 1992 Fish, this is a Fall 92 show that I would that they would recommend." So this was a show like I was familiar with early on. I think it gets to like part of the reason I was interested in talking about this was twofold. One, we don't really talk about Fall 92 on this podcast. We talk a lot about Spring 92, and there are a ton of really good Spring 92 shows that we highlighted just a year ago that I wanted to avoid repeating, because from a content standpoint, usually we don't want to repeat content within a year of itself. So that was part of my consideration. I also think this show from a set list standpoint absolutely rules. You've got just heavy hitters across the board. I also think it showcases in a couple moments where the band is human in a period where they are not necessarily performing like humans. This is like the speed jazz era of Fish. They're incredibly fast. They're incredibly tight. They're about to, within 4 or 5 months, really cross this threshold in improvisation. And this show doesn't necessarily showcase that in a way that I find really interesting from a contextual standpoint. It also has a ton of really great banter, and it feels a part of something that is historically one of my favorite things about Fish, and that is Fish on the cusp of the holidays and on the cusp of kind of this communal vacation. And Fish nails this vibe when they're playing either around New Year's or Thanksgiving runs or Halloween, or on the cusp of even like a festival when they self-create their own sort of holiday vibe. The show has that to me. It has that like warmth and that that element of kind of Fish's ability to create traditions and create kind of memories in the moment that transcend the music in a lot of cases. We also didn't get a lot of other suggestions. So that's got to be taken into consideration here. Nobody else suggested another show.
Yeah, because I wanted to do that one that you were like, oh, we talked about it last year, and we're going to talk about the good bit later, anyways.
Right.
I would say, for all the not talking about Fall 92 on here, there is a Fall 92 show that I would also like to highlight. It was, it's near and dear to my heart. It was October 13th, 1992. I saw the Spin Doctors at the Boathouse in Norfolk, Virginia, and it was cool. That's all I got.
Thank you. There
I
are
don't know
other.
why I meant to say it earlier, and I forgot to.
I just want, just for the people who are going to yell at us, there were 4 shows on the list, and I'm happy where we landed. But most importantly, this show happened 10 miles from where I am right now, and that seems to be relevant. This in the Keswick Theater, 1,300 person venue that still exists, but they never played there again. This was it. It's in sort of north, just over the northwest border of the Philly area, and it's near Arcadia University. So those are some things that happened, but it's close to where I am. We could meet there in an hour if you guys want.
I'll be late.
Brian, do you want to meet there?
Tomorrow I can be there. Not an hour, but tomorrow.
Cool. All right. So the one thing we have to talk about before we get into 11/25/92 is this legendary tweezer from Eureka 421. One of the coolest versions of the song, I think, still to this day. We talked about this on Undermine. Holly Bowling did a cover of this version specifically, which I think most people probably know. Most people probably know this version, but it's man, there's something about it. I don't know. I wish I had more to say in an intro, except that it's just really amazing. What do you guys have to say?
I would say words about it. It's
go.
It's beautiful. It could be composed. In fact, I think it's an excellent choice for Holly Bowling to transcribe and perform, because it feels that complete as a piece of improvised music. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it's funny, when I was listening to it today, my dumb music brain, which is different from other people's smart music brains, because it makes connections that aren't necessarily real. But I thought about it in kind of as being sort of like a David Bowie, in that, they start tweezer, it kind of transforms into the big improv section, and then it's really more about when they're coming out of the jam back to closed tweezer. You can hear the tension build as they kind of like lean towards tweezer, much the same way that they would close a David Bowie. Otherwise, musically, completely different to David Bowie. And in fact, there is a David Bowie that closes the first set of this show, and I listened to that too. And it is completely different sonically, and a very different energy, and as it probably ought to be. And yeah, it's a gorgeous piece. And what do they pull it off in like 12 and a half minutes or something like that? It's not super long, and it doesn't need to be. It's just really amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's like April 92. I think is like the first great month that the band played, where every single show is essential. It's worth hearing. You have that run from 416 to 422, 423, I think, that all of those shows, you said it earlier, RJ, like this is the year where there's the first real epic shows where everyone has to hear this. And it's a full week where you hear the band just kind of night after night. Who knows if it was easy travel through California at that point in time, or they just had a really good crew with them, or they were just all in really good moods and like really happy
Decent
about the
weed.
way that they were playing. Probably pretty decent weed, and at a time where nationally you couldn't really count on that when you were traveling across state lines. But all these things kind of combine, whatever it may be, that those shows just have an energy that feels slightly elevated compared to years prior, and even compared to March, May, and the subsequent year. But even still with that, there's nothing in 1992 that sounds like this Tweezer. Nothing. Like
Yeah.
I've listened to it all. There's nothing. The closest thing is the April 8th David Bowie. That is like the first really, really good, let's blow the doors off on David Bowie. Let's see what happens with this song. The thing that blows me away about this Tweezer, you said it, John, the composed aspect to it, the fact that Trey sounds like every note he chooses, even when he's going outside of the initial melody that he sets, all sounds pre-planned, all sounds right on cue from a tempo standpoint, from a melodic standpoint, even when he's going kind of veering off to the side of what he originally came up with. The tone and the effect that he's playing with sounds different. It almost sounds like he's playing through like a tube coming out of his amplifier. It's like very narrow and kind of spongy, and it sounds super colorful, and it just has this like effect when you listen to it that you almost hear him reimagining what his guitar can sound like. And when I hear this jam, I hear what the band will sound like in August of the following year. I hear the risks that they're going to be willing to take in November 94. I hear the focus and the melody and the energy that they're going to play with in December 95, all kind of encapsulated in this one little jam. And it blows me away every time I listen to it, because it sounds 2-3 years ahead of its time. But without this type of jam, I don't think that there's not a foundation to go back to say, okay, whatever we did then, let's try to figure out how to get back there again.
I feel like Mike sounds like he's having a sculpture room sort of experience though with
Yeah.
this too. It's
His notes
you
are
talked at
fucking
length about
massive,
Trey,
dude.
and you're not wrong on any of that, but they're all really, really on point with it. And
Yeah.
Mike's. As Trey said at Ian's in '89, it takes all of us,
Totally.
it really does.
Yeah, Mike sounds bombastic, but also is like, I mean, he's playing within and without what Trey is playing with. And that formula is something that is going to be so special about this band going forward. Last thought is just, I kept thinking about is it Randall's? Yeah, Randall's Island Chalk Dust Torture from 24 years after this, where not necessarily, that jam goes into a ton of different territory that they would need 20 years to figure out how to get to that type of place. But there's something about that chalk dust, they're playing chalk dust, and I don't know where Trey just finds a melody and he's off running. And this Tweezer has that same quality. There's no like cool down and then let's build it up and find the melody. It just, he finds it and they just go. And that will be something that will kind of define them as they continue to evolve improvisationally.
I only want to do this for the people who are going to yell at us. It was 22 years later, not 24 years later. Brian, I'm sorry.
My God.
I'm sorry.
Math is
sorry
for
to do that.
I was a history major, guys. I don't know. I know years, but not how to add or subtract them.
So there's a amazing, like, coming back to the jam. Trey's soloing at the end of this is just awesome, and it's beautiful. And I do have a theory. We haven't yet talked about the show that we came here to talk about, so I don't know if I have time. But last week we were talking about the Horns tour, and I do wonder if some of this melodic playing in songs like this was influenced by these horn, charts that Trey created, and whether that has anything to do with it, which I've never, in all my years of thinking about Fish, I've never really thought about that before, but I feel like there might be something to that, but who knows? Maybe we should ask
I like
Trey.
that idea. I'd never really thought about it that way, but it kind of makes sense with the way that it almost sounds like he's playing a trombone through a guitar. It's like the way his notes just like,
yeah,
like it's so wild.
We should we should ask someone. I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Trey probably doesn't
Also-
remember at this point.
He
So
thought it
we
happened in 1998.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, the Horns tour, and that was in 96, right? Yeah.
The
At
best
Red
year of
American
Fish.
Ball.
The anger
but,
of the Sacramento crowd when he said, we were back here 6 years ago.
Yep.
People just started
Everyone
yelling
was
at him.
so pissed. Okay,
Memories.
so we're going to the. Should we go to the Keswick Theater?
Yeah,
Yes, do it.
let's get through this. So we're gonna like speed jazz through the rest of this show here.
Fine.
This is just to borrow your terminology.
Fish played a
Brian.
show on 11/25th, 1992, November 25th, and it is available on re-listen for you to check out. All right, we will
I
see
feel
you
like I saw
guys
them 3
next
years
week.
later
See you
on
next
that
week.
day, and they also fucked up a song. But let's
Can I? All right, because that is a big focus of this, and that is, to be clear, something I will fully admit I forgot about until I re-listened to this show. I probably
I
haven't
think it's
listened to the show in 20 years.
hilarious though. So
I do too. Did that take anything away from this show for you, or did that
No,
add to the
I think
show?
it added. I think it added for me.
increased
too.
charm. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
okay.
Good.
Go ahead,
RJ.
Jonathan.
Tell us
No,
what
you go.
happened at this concert. No,
You
I
tell us.
want you to. Okay.
I don't even remember.
So set one. I'm just going to run down the set list real quick, and then we can all pick a couple highlights. First set, great opener, should be the best show ever. Buried Alive, into Poor Heart, Landlady, Fee into The Maze, Sparkle into It's Ice, Squirming Coil into Cavern. Really into Sweet Adeline, back into Cavern, into Antelope, Heavy Metal Cavern. Let's talk about this first set real quick. I'm gonna, because I have the floor, I'll keep the floor. It's all, none of it's not good, to be clear. It's all really good, just well played. The Sparkle is like breakneck. The Maze is pretty cool and intense. Megaphone verses on Fee, of course. The Cavern, I think, and the Antelope are probably my highlights. The Cavern has like this crazy heavy metal thing Trey's doing through the first part of it that is rad. Like, bring that back. And that's the kind of stuff you'd get at this point with Fish, is that, sure, they're not doing a 40-minute tweezer, but they're fucking around with their own formula already. And it's pretty cool. Like, give me the Heavy Metal Cavern, please. And the Antelope is just, it's kind of just perfect bonkers 92 Antelope energy, and a great way to close the set.
Yeah, I feel like so when we compare, or when we talk about 1992, for me, if I'm going to go to any 92 show, it's usually going to be from the spring. But even still, the first sets in the spring are very, very straight. They're played very straight, oftentimes. This, what I like about this show is the Squirming Coil through the Antelope segment. There's exactly what you're talking about, Jonathan. The Squirming Coil has this like weird 45, 50 seconds segment where it sounds like they're just like found themselves in this like hyper groove jam and are moving away from it. And it sounds way, way different than anything I'd heard from Squirming Coil at that period. That fades into Cavern, the aforementioned heavy metal section. They break for Adeline, come back for Cavern, end with a really cool Antelope. I just think it showcases what you're talking about. They're chipping away at what has been written, what has been defined, what has been rehearsed over and over again. There was a comment here, I just want to pull it up, from Came to Play. How linear was the 89 and 92 progression? Each year demonstrably better than the last. I don't think that each year was necessarily demonstrably better than the last, because I think that whole period, it kind of sounds the same in a lot of cases. It's a very, very tight band, just further polishing and refining what they do. But I think you hear by the tail end of the year them start to chip away at what they have been refining and what they have been polishing over the last 4 years, in an attempt to say, what's kind of the next step. And the next step is ultimately breaking these songs down, which you get in the middle part of this, or the latter part of this first set.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an attempt to say that so much as it's like, Fish never letting themselves stay in the boxes they create. They're
Right.
they're constantly ready to kick down every wall as soon as they build it. RJ, did you get a good nap in the set?
Yeah. No, I
good.
think the maze, the antelope is a great closer. There's yeah, I mean the antelope is great. The maze is one of the songs that debuted in '92, and it just adds so much to these sets. You know,
Mhm.
there's like, I mean, what a crazy song to bring into a live performance. You know, I mean, I just saw one a couple months ago, but it's still like pretty fucking cool. You know, so
I think
I think that
the right take on a 92 maze is, I mean, I used the word bonkers earlier. I think it
yeah,
fully applies. Like, who
yeah,
writes that? Who plays
yeah,
that?
yeah. It
It's
just
clearly
changes. I
something you're
think.
only writing when you can play that fast and you can
Right.
play that loud and you can all play like in this sustained energy. It's like having this and Llama in your catalog is just insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just the thinking about this compared to 91, like these songs that start to debut in 92, there's a couple more in the second set, but it changes the feel of the show and makes it feels more like modern Fish,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I totally
Um
get that.
should we move to set 2?
Take us there.
Okay, first I want to say, if you've been listening to our podcast, you've probably heard us over the past several months talk about Smartwool. This is our last month of working with Smartwool for now, and you probably heard some of the ads that we put at the beginning of the episodes. But I want to tell you quickly, just because we have a deal. So I'll tell you about that. But I think you all know, for more than 25 years, Smartwool has been making merino wool socks and apparel designed to keep you comfortable, because they want to help you play, laugh, and explore the outdoors. And they believe that comfort sharpens focus and lets you perform beyond your limits. I agree with that. This shirt I'm wearing, I'm performing on this podcast at a much higher level because I'm comfortable. And that's important. And Smartwool is here to help you feel good. And you can take 15% off your first order on smartwool.com. So check them out. And I just want to thank them for all of their support for our shows over the past several months. Okay. So we have Brian, second set opener, Chalk Dust, Foam, Fast Enough for You, You Enjoy Myself, Lizards, Tweezer, Hold Your Head Up, Cracklin' Rosie, Hold Your Head Up, My Sweet One, Tweezer Reprise, Harry Hood Encore, Carolina. The crowd was really into this, which I like the recording of this. But what's your take on the second set and how it flows?
Well, I don't think that really any set during this era flowed incredibly well. I think maybe like 416, 421 are like the sets that flow really well. I think that a lot of what they were doing at this point in time is throwing a bunch of songs at the table or at the wall and, allowing their big songs to be played at big moments in the set with some filler in between, which is fine. I think that that's kind of what they were doing before they got to a point in, I think, August '93, where they were able to start like segueing from one song to another with a seamless precision that gave those sets a lot more flow. I think the highlights of this set, I thought the You Enjoy Myself jam was really great, and I thought the vocal jam, I don't know, maybe it was just like hearing this plucked out of the entire year. There's a ton of humor in the vocal jam. They're talking about like putting on a jacket, and like the crowd is starting to like hoot and holler with it. The Lizards, as we talked about, there's two moments in this song. One, Trey emphasizes how close they are to King of Prussia over and over again, as to kind of like hit fans over the head of like what Gamehenge is and how significant it is to them at this point in time. And then he completely forgets the lyrics to the second verse and uses it as an opportunity to connect with fans, say hello to his grandfather, and then they restart it, and you can hear him just be like, "Fuck, I have no idea how to," like, he needs like a fan to shout out the first
second
line,
verse?
which is great. Like it's this breakdown of, the band what they'll be in a couple of years, where they're impenetrable in a lot of ways playing in arenas versus what they are now playing in theaters. Someone said it here in the comments, like, we knew this was the end of when we could see this band in theaters, and it's the last time you really seen them connect with fans in that sort of way. The tweezer, I think, absolutely rocks and goes directly into Hold Your Head Up, which is always a cool feature. And then the last thing that stuck out to me about the set was, I don't know what it is, I love when My Sweet One is buried deep in a show like this. It's a very, like, they do it randomly where they'll put My Sweet One at this place in a show. There's a Fall 94 show, I think 11:30, that has a My Sweet One here. There's a great SPAC show from summer 2016. I think it's the first night that has My Sweet One like deep in set 2, and it just adds kind of this bizarre bluegrass humor, speed jazz feel to the overall end of the set that I really like that.
I think this set has decent flow. This is the kind of set that I started listening to when I started listening to Fish. This. I don't think this was one of my early
I don't
tapes,
disagree with that.
but it was. This is the kind of shit I got and loved, and Chalk Dust rips, Foam rips, Fast Enough for You, pretty cool. You Enjoy Myself, it's great. Like, it's a good, like, typical You Enjoy Myself, really cool jam. I like the guitar sound that Trey's getting at this point. I really enjoyed hearing it in the jam on the You Enjoy Myself. Cool, little vocal jam. I laughed and laughed as he fucked up lizards again and again. That was great. And yeah, I like that connection to the audience that you were describing, Brian. That's one of those walls, fourth wall, boom, down. We're having an exchange right here with the people in front of the stage. And tweezer is fine. It just happens at, like, in a flash. I think it's, what is it, 7-9 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love Cracklin' Rosie. I got new cymbals, Fishman tells everybody. And, I loved seeing Cracklin' Rosie, and I'm glad they were still playing it when I started seeing Fish. And I want to talk about this Harry Hood, because I think this Harry Hood is probably my favorite part of this show. It's very pretty, as Hood ought to be. It's not, a particularly notable version. It is a standard, great, really good version of Harry Hood, and I like it. And I think they were having enough fun that they wanted to then step out and give everybody the Carolina to close it off. I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, I think that the only thing I would add, the Fast Enough for You, it's another song that is the third time played, and kind of changes the whole makeup of the set. It's just this new material from Rift, and 93 obviously will get even more new material. That to me is what kind of distinguishes the shows as we go through these years, is what are the new songs that are
Ballads.
kind of changing up. Yeah. They do those, Jonathan. They do a lot of them.
I'm a fan.
You'll see. Just wait until we get to the later years. You'll hear a lot.
I've been there.
You Enjoy Myself is really good, though. That's a solid. That's a solid one. That's like 18-19 minutes. The vocal jam gets pretty wild, but yeah, it's a good set. This show does flow well, Brian. I think it does flow really well, and I think Harry Hood encore. Can't argue with that.
Can't fault that.
Yeah, Harry Hood has been around since 85 at this point. It's only the 6th time that it's been an encore slot. And I tend to love Harry Hood in the encore slot. It's a really nice cap off for a show. You get that kind of break after the set. You get to kind of reflect a little bit, and then they come out and they play Hood. And you're in it for at least 12 to 15 minutes if they don't take it off into an extended jam. And to have just like a pretty version like this and then go into another a cappella song, it's a nice way to cap off a show. Plus, Trey advises everyone not to feed any turkey to their dogs. You get the acknowledgement of where we're at seasonally. I'm a big fan of Thanksgiving jokes and Thanksgiving camaraderie. It's just a warm time of year, and you get that vibe here.
Do you guys want to talk about the Trey thing with lizards or not?
Yeah, what do you want to talk about? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I
hilarious.
mean,
I
it was interesting. I don't know what does it I don't know. Your thoughts.
I am of the mindset that, and Jonathan said this really well, when the fourth wall is broken at a Fish show, it is one of my favorite things. When the idea that band audience engagement, which is not something you are paying for when you are paying for a concert, like theoretically you're paying for the band to provide an artistic service to make you feel a certain way. Like that's just the cut and dry of it all. But when the band says, hold on, this is a part of the show, but this is also just a normal interaction with us because we are human and we fucked up, that adds an element to a Fish show to me. And when he, like, you've got to imagine at this point in time, there was a ton of focus, a ton of prep set list wise going into these shows. They're practicing constantly. They're writing all these songs, that to kind of be ripped out of that in front of, I don't know how many people this venue holds, but a couple thousand people, a couple hundred people, has to kind of be a jarring experience. And he handles it really well. He handles it with kind of the humor and the humility. And, he doesn't try to overlook it. He almost makes you as the listener and as the audience member look at him messing up and take humor in that moment as well. It just adds a ton to me.
Yeah, I think he plays the end of the song pretty well too. So,
very well. That's the other thing. They begin it halfway through and they nail it.
Yeah, he distracted himself. He got caught up in the joke. And that's fine. I want to say at the beginning of this, I made a comment that 3 years later, I would see them mess up. But it was like 3 years minus 3 days because it was 11/22/95. I did see the 11/25/95 show too, but 11/22 where Fish was blamed for botching Rift by Trey.
He didn't handle that one with grace. Instead, he decided to play a 33-minute version of Free.
I thought that was pretty graceful. We fucked that up. Here's this. Boom. Peel yourself off the floor of the Cap Center. First, then 3 years after, 3 days after that, 3 years after this, first Hampton show was a pretty good night, if I remember correctly. And let me tell you, folks, I do. I remember correctly.
So so now we're just talking about Fish shows that we've seen.
Yeah, because I'm done. I'm moving on.
What do you think about the fuck up? Do you think it's okay? Are you okay with this? Would you have asked?
I like that he was intimidated by Ernest Anastasio the First, who was in attendance.
I loved that.
Is that it? No, but he kind of rolled it all into one thing, and I thought it was interesting. I thought it was good. I do like when he, the humility of it is interesting, and I think that was kind of gone by the mid '90s. I mean, especially in the late '90s, right? He was sort of like, I think they were still having fun, but if he fucked up, he would blame it on someone else or be kind of annoyed and once in a while walk off stage.
In 1995,
2000,
he couldn't.
Vegas 2000 Esther, where he forgets the lyrics and then just laughs to himself and kind of waves off to the crowd and goes, "She's gone, she's dead." And he sounds kind of pissed, but also I don't know the words of the song.
And there's the third set of Vegas '98 where he just leaves the stage in the middle of Wolfman's Brother.
That's a different. Completely different thing.
You've been there too. You know exactly what he was going through.
I'm actually doing that right now.
That's something else. But in a couple of years, he couldn't look over the stage and say, "What are the words?" People are A, too far away.
Yeah.
B, couldn't hear them. They all sound like they're doing a death chant, I think he said in '97. And it's just a completely different world from the Keswick Theater in 1992. And I hope Ernest Anastasio the First not only did he see Trey fuck up lizards, but he also got to see Trey and the band engage with their audience in a way that is special to be able to do that. And here they have an audience that not only can they engage with, but the audience can give them the lyrics to their own songs. That says something about the relationship, about the commitment of the fans. and it's also something that you wouldn't see in the same way soon after.
That's it. That's it right there.
This is
When
fun.
we jump ahead. We're
We did
either
it.
going to another theater if we do spring 93, or we're going to frickin' amphitheaters and arenas if we do summer and New Year's Eve. I don't know what we're going to do, but there's a big leap potentially ahead of us right now.
I
And
would
you're
say
absolutely right that this is like the end of that.
There's the slightest chance we're going to cover Leprechaun next week. We'll find out.
We're going to find out. So we're going to go to 1993, and I promise that we will make a good decision as we always do. And we do have some deciding to do. I have a thought on 93, but it's going to get shot down. So we're gonna choose a good show. That much
Maybe we should introduce a new bit where we throw out suggestions and have people vote on them, and then we just do what they say.
No, I think we
or
throw out
do what they
suggestions,
don't
have
say.
people vote on them, and then do what the fuck we want anyways.
That is the fish way for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody
Not
for tuning
thriller.
in. This is fun. We're gonna be back. I think Megan will be back, and we'll be back. We're gonna be going back to 93. Forward, back, forward.
We're going to go forward back to 1993. Y'all
We're going
stay tuned.
back to the future.
We're going back to the future.
We can't say that. We're going to get sued.
But we literally are. We're going, it's
Yeah.
actually happening.
Now I'm confused, so I guess we should just end this. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, all.
Bye-bye.